Okay. So tonight, the learning objectives. We're going to go into the definition of what is a circuit. And it just so happened, Sister Charlotte, you didn't get a chance to see this on Wednesday, but when you spoke about the circuits, I had this book on my shelf that I've been looking at for probably the past couple of years, and I haven't really touched it yet. This book, Circuit Analysis, deals with electricity, and this was the foundation of the demo kit that we used for Wednesday. I'm gonna deal with it briefly today, but we're thanks to you, you kind of inspired me to go back and pick this book up again and learn more about engrams by studying physics. So what is a circuit? Then we're going to go into the tech, and we're going to deal with the explanation of what is a Demon circuit. And the main subject matter tonight is to find the correlation between the Demon circuit of the tech and the whispering devil of the Holy Qur'an. Does all that make sense? Because really we're talking about the same thing. We're going to specifically look at Suratal Araf, the elevated places, and that's going to be Surah 7, ayat number 20. We're going to look at Suratal Ta Ha, which is Surah 20, verse 120. Suratal Qaf, that's Surah 50, ayat number 16. And Suratal Nas, the men, which is Surah 114, and we're going to look at verses 4 and 5. Each one of these ayats in the Holy Quran have one specific word that is found in all four of the verses, and that's why I posted, that's why we'll go into them, but we're going to really delve into the first one, Surah 7, verse 20. But first, let's look at what a circuit is. So now I got a short video. The video is a little bit over 2 minutes. We're going to go through the video, and we're going to get the explanation of what a circuit is with respect to electricity. And then we're going to use this as a demo kit to explain a demon circuit and how a demon circuit works. During the video, if you have a question or a cognition, feel free to stop me. I'll have no problem stopping the video, and then we can continue after your question, your cognition. But let's go ahead and play this. Can everyone see my screen before I go forward?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Let's begin by looking at how a simple circuit allows a light bulb to light. A circuit is a route through which electrical current can flow. In our example, electrons flow from the negative side of a D-cell battery to a conducting material on the base of the bulb. From there, the electrons flow up a wire that is inside the bulb and across the filament, which is the part of the bulb that actually lights. When the electrons go through the filament, some of the electrical energy is changed to heat and light energy. The electrons continue down another small wire inside the bulb to another conductor on the base of the bulb. The electrons finally make their way to the positive side of the battery. There would not be a complete circuit if the electrons did not travel to the positive side of the battery, and the bulb would not light. When there is an unbroken path on which electrons flow, as in this example, it is called a complete circuit. The unbroken path that the electrons follow is called a closed circuit, because electricity will only flow on an unbroken path. The light bulb will not light unless there is a closed circuit. Now look closely at the light bulb, and you'll notice that there is an insulator between the conductor that leads up to the filament and the conductor that leads away from the filament. Remember that the atoms of conductors easily accept and pass on electrons. The atoms of insulators do not. As we discussed in the first section of the lesson, electrons will not easily pass through insulating material that surrounds a wire. If an insulator did not surround a wire carrying a current, it is possible for the electron flow to get directed to another conductor that comes into contact with the circuit. Electricity will follow the path of least resistance. If the electrons take a path short of the complete circuit, it is called a short circuit.
Okay. Now let me get back here. Now, family, when I study anything dealing with mathematics or science, what I strive to do is there's two key points, and I have stressed these points many times, and I'll stress it here again. A Torchlight for America, page 48 to page 51. Two key points the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan gives to us. Number one, he says, put Allah at the center of your education. Okay. Number two, he stresses that whenever you study something, you're not studying a subject. He says that you are the subject. Has everyone heard that before? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So every time I study something in math or science, I don't just study it to solve the equations and to memorize information. I strive to study it and I make it personal, as if I'm looking at an outer representation of something that exists within myself. And I also try to connect it with the teachings, so that if I can make many different connections, then for me, the information transfers from short-term memory to long-term memory, and it facilitates not only understanding, but long-term retention of the concept. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So for Wednesday, and everyone can have their own cognitions. We had many scientists in the room on Wednesday, and we hit this from many different angles. When I was studying this, I looked at the battery as the source of the Demon Circuit, or you could say the battery represents the engram, or you can say the battery represents someone that's back on our time track. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Quick question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Quick question. Is anyone taking screen prints, screenshots?
No, sir.
No, sir.
I keep hearing, I mean, I have no problem if you're doing that. I keep hearing something in the background. Anyway, doesn't matter. So the battery is the individual. For me, anyone can have their own cognitions, and please do share your cognitions. But for me, the battery represented an individual from the past. The wire coming from the battery to the bulb represented the pathway, and each electron represented a circuit, a verbal statement that was passed on from that person in the past to me. And when the light bulb represents aberration. So every time that demon circuit hits, the engram turns on. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
It does.
Yes, sir.
And then the pathway that goes from the light bulb going back to the battery, that's what happens when we go back on the time track. And that's what keeps us aberrated. The person from the past implanted the demon circuit in us, which activates the engram, and the engram keeps us attached to the past. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Does anyone see anything different in this? Every answers are correct. So if you have something, please share.
No. My hand.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
I have a question.
Okay.
How do you turn off the light bulb? because I'm saying if you have a person, just say you have a person, and every time you see that person, you know, you automatically starts getting re-stimulated.
Okay.
And it all comes back. So how do you turn the light bulb off?
That's a beautiful question. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do this. If you look at it from the perspective of the diagram in front of us, you have to find a way to drain that battery. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So draining the battery, we could say, comes from Dianetic processing.
Okay.
So if you drain the battery, look at it from this perspective. I think all of us are at that age where we remember this. Remember when we used to have Walkmans, have cassette tapes?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Think of that battery in the Walkman as the reactive mind, and whatever tape you were listening to represents the demon circuit, correct?
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Okay. What happened as that battery died down? What happened to the circuit? What happened to the tape, the
It
song?
gets slower and slower till it stops.
Until it stops. Okay. So if you drain the battery on a Walkman, wouldn't that be the same as a release or a clear?
Correct.
Okay. So that's one way to make that light bulb go out, is to drain that battery. Now, when you're dealing with a person, because I think you have a person in mind, you might be thinking of. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. One of the things L. Ron Hubbard talks about is that you have to come at that person slightly above their tone and then slowly raise them up on a gradient level. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So sometimes just by us giving someone the greetings, hey, how you doing? Oh, you know, them shoes are nice. Where'd you get those shoes? You know, it brings a person's tone level up just a little bit. And then by conversation, you can slowly bring that individual up. That is the same as, if we're dealing with this diagram, is turning off that, because they're probably in a state of chronic restimulation. And just by us as believers speaking a kind word to them, we are slowly bringing them up the gradient scale, and we're bringing them back into present time. Does that answer your question?
What about the other person?
Which other person?
If the person that comes into your presence re-stimulates you,
Oh, okay.
how do you, or I should say, I'll say myself, how do I again turn off that light bulb so she doesn't it doesn't re-stimulate me?
Oh, that's a good question.
I've done a lot of self-analysis, but it still doesn't fix it to where once I see that person, then I don't become re-stimulated.
So that person is a re-stimulation then.
Yes.
Okay. The best thing I can say is to find someone who can actually apply some processing, because, and this is just based on the text, it might not be that particular person. It might be characteristics of that person that represent characteristics from someone on the time track. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So it could be something that the person wears, a way that they talk, certain words they use, certain mannerisms they have. This is causing overstimulation. There's something there that's causing you to go back in the time track. And the way you're reacting to them, perhaps, is the way that you would have reacted to someone else who's no longer present. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So do you have a sister you can connect with to actually do some
yes, sir.
processing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So does that answer everything?
Yes, it does. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Praise be to Allah. Go ahead, Sister Shayla.
Two things for this. There's another thing that she can also do. This is easier said than done, sis. Sister, you can just be with the person and admire the person. I didn't say like the person, admire what they're doing. Because when you admire something, it will disappear. Because what it's doing, or you can say to yourself, you could say something to you, and it has to be genuine. It can't be something fake. And you say,
Right.
But Sister Shayla, I don't like nothing about this person. But there's something that person does very well, and that is annoy you. So you admire that this person have the ability to annoy you. And be with that in the presence of that person. I guarantee you, when you send admiration over there, it will change the person. Not that the person will stop being annoying to you, but you will realize that when you confront it and you admire it, before you go with that person, maybe you should just go to the train station and admire a bum. You know what I mean? Just to test what you can find to admire in another human being. And you'll get more power over that re-stimulation. That works very well. But confront is not so it's easier said than done.
Yes, ma'am.
It just is. You have to like be ready to get into the arena and be Muhammad Ali yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
That's one. And I noticed, Brother Lukman, that when the video was playing, it says that it always has to get to the positive side. So I said, that's when the engram get to the God side of us and turn us other than ourselves. Like it makes us other than ourselves. Because it always have to go to the positive side. So I was thinking, that's how our engram work. It really does, because you can be at peace, and the minute you're stimulated, something happened to us, right? So that means it went to the positive side and did it rotation as the video. That's what I was thinking when the video was playing.
Now, what would be the significance of the fact that it flows from the negative to the positive?
Because then the negative is always suggesting things to the positive that are not right. It's just not. I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but that's what I was thinking.
No, whatever your cognition is, what your cognition is, but that's fine. That's fine.
Because you know how it says it casts evil suggestion in form resolution. I thought, well, that means it has to go from the negative side, the weaker side of myself, the weaker side of ourself, to the God side of ourself. So it's the mind, it rotates in the mind. It always go to, because if it stayed when it's not remission. That's a cancer word. Oh my God, I've been dealing with cancer too much. So not remission, but before the re-stimulation happened, it's under control and it's in the negative side. And for me to be impacted by it, it has to get to my positive side and do the whole circle, the sort of circuitry. Okay, that's it. I'm not saying nothing.
Oh,
that's how I understood that.
Oh, thank you, Sister Shayla. Sister Deborah.
Yes, sir. What I first saw was the action of completing the cycle from one going to the other.
Now, would you say that as a cycle of aberration, or you just saw it as a cycle?
No, a cycle of aberration.
Okay.
Because it's just going around, caught up in the loop.
Okay, now I'm gonna throw a little, well, it's not a curveball. I'm gonna throw something at you. A cycle of aberration in diet, because that's exactly what it is. In the Dianetic language, what is that called? What's the terminology that would explain what you just said?
Restimulation.
What type of restimulation? What's the term for restimulation where it's constant?
Chronic.
Chronic.
Ah, yes.
But cycle of aberration is actually one of the ways that I wrote it down as well, because I look at everything now as cycles of action. Everything is a cycle of action to me. So that could be seen as a cycle of aberration, because if that battery, that person from your time track is constantly sticking the needle in your brain called demon circuits, and your aberrated mind is constantly causing the compulsions, obsessions, insanities, neuroses, and psychoses, and you're constantly going back on the time track, then that's a cycle of aberration. And the individual they're stuck in a loop, right?
Yes, sir.
So that makes perfect sense. Anything else?
No, sir, that was it.
All right. Well, thank you for that. That makes perfect sense. Go ahead, Sister Ania.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
I also thought about the fact that it flowed from the negative to the positive. And of course, there's more than one way to look at a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a sense, I could, you could explain this from a positive aspect, but because we're dealing with demon circuits, I'll just focus on that. And it took me to the Holy Qur'an, and I don't have the verse, but the part where Allah wants to know, in essence, what we're made of. He wants to know if we say that we believe, but He wants to know for sure if we believe.
Surah 29.
Surah 29.
Yes, ma'am. Do men think they'll be left alone on saying they believe and will not be tried? Is that the verse you're looking for?
That's not the one, but that's a good one. That's another one. So thank you for that. So he, in order to find out if we are really with him, he tests us over and over and over and over again. And so that's the continuous flow. That's what I saw of the negative to the positive of, we look at the engram as being totally like, okay, I'll say it like a bad thing. It's bad if we don't master what's there in the engram, and if we just allow it to constantly get the best of us, then yes, it can produce bad. But because it's constantly there, flowing to the positive, that's the God side of us flowing from the ungodly side to the godly side, constantly testing the God side to see what we're made of. And once we maybe we didn't pass the test, first 20 go rounds, and so we have to go through it again. But then in Surah 94, Allah says, surely with difficulty is ease. With difficulty is surely ease. And he starts off with that surah saying, have we not expanded for thee thy breast, and removed from thee thy burden which weighed down thy back, and exalted for thee thy mention? So eventually we get to the point where it starts off as being difficult, but then as we gain mastery over it, and as we start to those engrams come up, and they, you know, we've chipped away, you know, some of the links in the chain on the time track. And so each time we go into processing, we go further back on the time track and we clear those out. So surely with difficulty, it's difficult at first, but it gets easier and easier as we go along. And we gain mastery, and we become more godly each time. So I saw it as, even though it starts off as a negative, but it becomes a positive as we gain mastery over it.
That's good observation. Let me throw this at you. Would you say that Surah 94 could be a cycle of action?
Yes, sir.
Because eventually, as you go through the difficulty and ease, it says, and when thou art free from anxiety, work hard.
Yes, sir.
Make thy Lord thy exclusive object. So we have to go through all of that to start change. And then the stop will be eventually what? That we'll be free from anxiety.
Yes, sir.
So I didn't think of that until you just said it, but Surah 94 looks like a cycle of action.
Praise be to Allah.
Praise be to Allah. Anyone else? All right, let's go forward. So the concept of circuit analysis from the perspective of physics. The analysis of the behavior of an electric current to see how it responds to a given input. That's the basic concept of circuit analysis. It explains the relationship between an input, which comes in the form of the voltage, and the current. Then you have the circuit, which represents the wire, and then you have the output, which would be the light bulb. Does that make sense? Again, this is another cycle, start, change, stop. A circuit starts with an input. You have to put a battery. If you have a circuit, you put a battery in it, and that's where everything begins. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That battery goes in. So the voltage is the pressure that's inside the battery that pushes the electrons, which is your current, through the wire. So the battery is the input. The wire represents the circuit, and the output is the amount of light that's produced. And when you look at your light bulb, some light bulbs are 45 watt, some are 60 watt. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the wattage on your light bulb will tell you how bright that light is. Okay. When you look at it from the perspective of Dianetics, the input is the verbal command, the demon circuit. From the perspective of the supreme wisdom, we would call that the needle in the brain. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
The wire is the individual. And then the output represents our aberrated behavior. So how many individuals in this room are still aberrated? Can you raise your hands?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so based on our aberrations, that would lead us into the understanding that when we act other than our own self, that action is based on a needle that was placed in the brain. Could we say that?
Yes.
Okay. So somewhere in our time track, we were on our own island of Patmos. That was probably a house that we lived in, and the members of our family, some were probably nurses, some were cremators, some were doctors, and some were ministers. Someone stuck a needle in our brain. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And that's why we have the aberrated output. So now what is a circuit? This is actually from the Dianetic Technical Dictionary. Electricity, the complete path of an electric current, including usually the generating device, also by extension, any portion of such a path. So we're talking about that closed circuit. When the path is complete, so that the electricity is free to flow, the circuit is closed or made circuit, and any components on the path could be said to be in circuit. So if you look at your household, you have a light switch. When you close the gap of that wire, the light bulb comes on. When you flip the switch, you're opening the circuit, you're stopping the flow, and the light goes off. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If the path is interrupted at any point, it is called an open or a broken circuit, and any components on the path could be said to be out of circuit. Okay, that's just the basic electrical definition. Does anyone have any questions or anything that they misunderstand before we go forward with anything that they would like to explain? Sister Patricia.
Yes, sir. When you say that if the path is interrupted, interrupted by what?
Okay, so for example, if you're sitting in the room where you're at right now, you have a light that's on in the corner, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you have a path that is complete. There's no gap in that circuit. When you leave the room, you flip the switch, what happens to the light?
Goes out.
It goes out. Now you have an open circuit. There's a gap there. So now once you flip the switch, the electrons are no longer flowing, so that they can't flow to the light and turn the light on. So that's an open or an incomplete circuit. You flip the switch down, you're actually closing the circuit. You're allowing the electrons to flow through the wire, and they're just doing a complete cycle to keep that light on. Does that answer your question?
So that's the interruption?
The interruption is when you flip the switch and turn the light off. You're interrupting the flow of electrons.
So what is the difference between open and broken? I mean, because it's similarly.
It's the same thing. Same thing.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, same thing. A broken circuit or an open circuit. So for example, if you're just flipping it, you open a circuit. If you decided if you wanted to, let's say you want to hang a picture or something, and you happen to drive a nail exactly where the wire is, we won't talk about the fact of you getting shocked, but if you break that, that's a broken circuit. It's the same as an open circuit. The electrons aren't going to flow.
So if a person has this going on and a person passed out, does that do anything to the circuit, or it just, when that person come back to, it just regenerated it and keep it going, or does it cut it off if that person passed out in some kind of situation, either the blood pressure, sugar levels low or something, or, you know?
Oh, so you're talking about regards to an individual?
Yes, sir. And because you're talking about the circuit and you're speaking of the mind, you know, of the traveling of what's going on into the mind. So, I mean, this is the comparison of the electricity. And if if you shut something off, then, you know, when a person was saying about how somebody comes and re-stimulates something, how do you stop the re-stimulation?
Okay.
There's some kind of technique you can do for yourself, you know, to not let it affect you. And I'm saying to the point of, you know, this circuit, if it's broken, is it broken from if you pass out? Is it broken when you go into anesthesia?
Oh, that's a good question. Go ahead.
So I'm just wondering about, you know, this circuit, because that's an interruption. You know, in your everyday life, you know, when you're going into something like that, there's an interruption. And so how does that affect the I'm thinking 5 times before I speak, that's why I'm pausing. You know, because it's important to be able to deal with this circuit. It's very important, very important.
Mhm.
So I'm just wondering what a person can do to help yourself to not, to help release this. I mean, I know the clear in the therapy, but there's something on the way, just like that self analysis. When you keep going over your self analysis is helping. So
Well,
I'm just
you just answered the question. The more you go over certain things, you're reducing the charge. If you're straight wiring, you're reducing certain things and you're gaining back attention units. And then the more you do that, you'll get to a point, and I'll just speak for myself. This is something that I purposely do. I'm a firm believer that when you look at the 99 attributes of Allah, and Allah taught Adam all the names, I don't think Allah just said, okay, memorize these names and now you have mastery over the universe. My personal opinion is that in order for us to master the attributes, Allah allows us to go into environments where it is that environment will re-stimulate the opposite. For example, something that I used to do, I would purposely, if I'm driving on the thruway and I had to go through a toll booth, I would purposely pick the booth that had the longest line. Because what am I learning? I'm learning patience.
Patience.
So in order for me to learn patience, what do I have to do? I have to put myself in environments where I typically would be impatient. Okay. So there's certain things we can do if we're aware of our own defects and our own weaknesses. And I'm going to connect this to the study guides towards the end. If we are aware of our own shortcomings and defects, then we have to begin to work on ourselves. At one time, I used to be very, very impatient. And so there's certain things I would do on purpose to learn patience. Now I got 98 other attributes I got to work on.
yes, sir.
Okay. But now with regards to an individual from a different perspective, when a person encounters a situation that causes a tremendous amount of shock, the analytical mind clicks off and the reactive mind clicks on. That's kind of a safety switch. It's no different than you have in everyone that has a home, you have an electrical panel somewhere in your house where if you try to do the hair dryer and the microwave at the same time, it's going to trip the circuit. Okay. It trips the circuit because without that circuit being tripped, that wire will overheat and cause a fire inside the wall. The human mind has the same thing. When situations get too intense, one part of our mind clicks off and the other one clicks on. That's where the reactive mind comes in. Okay. And the way you have to fix that reactive mind is through the processing. You have to audit that to release what's actually in there. So there's a way to do it unconsciously. That's through the Dianetic auditing. And then to do it consciously is through the straight wire and the pleasure moments. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you for breaking it down to its lowest term.
Oh, praise be to Allah. Okay. Okay, the Demon Circuit in Dianetics. Sister Anna, you have another question?
Yes, it was related to the sister's question, because she was in describing it to you, she used the term if a person passes out.
Okay.
And I immediately thought, well, if a person passes out, that's a period of unconsciousness, which depending on what's occurring when the person passes out, what they're experiencing could cause the engram. So that's I was just was wondering more about her question, if she could elaborate.
So what you're saying is, say for example, a person receives information that's so overwhelming that they pass out. A death in the family or something happens and they just in the medical field, Brother Wadu, help me out. That would be called what? Neurogenic shock?
I would say more psychogenic shock.
Say again.
I would say that that would probably fall under more psychogenic shock, but I'm not
Psychogenic?
certain.
Okay. Okay. So that's kind of that's the same concept in the medical field that would be kind of similar to the Dianetics. It's receiving something that's so overwhelming that it might cause the individual to faint. That's the same as the unconsciousness. And we have to be mindful of what is said around that person, because now what we're doing is we're implanting circuits. Is that along the lines of what you're asking, Sister Ania?
Right, I'm asking what the sister, what she meant when she used that phrase. If that was what she's referring to or something else.
Yeah, was that what you
What I was saying was, when a person has all this upon them, layers of aberration engrams, and there's people who actually, they got a low sugar, they will pass out, or even a stroke person, So when that person come to or be revived, does something to the circuit?
are you talking
Does
about?
it
So
make the circuit make it worse, or does it break it to release something or pile up on you pile up on it?
if you're talking about someone's blood sugar going down, they get hypoglycemic and they pass out.
When something induces for you to pass out, yes.
That's still a moment of unconsciousness, and on one level, we could say that's a broken circuit, meaning that's when the reactive mind has clicked in. So something can be implanted. And, for example, someone's sugar gets so low, they pass out. And there have been many times I'd have to give individuals, we call it high dose dextrose. And then you revive them back because the blood sugar gets so low. But while they're unconscious, yeah, you could say that that's a broken circuit because they're unconscious, and whatever you say now, you could be implanting a circuit.
Yes, sir.
Are we all in agreement on that one then? Sister Ania?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, just want to make sure. Who had their hand up? Sister Shayla, did you have your hand up?
You explained it very well. It is an engramic moment, and whatever is happening in the surrounding will create another engram, which will cause a lock on the previous one. It's a chain now.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Which is another reason why just because a person goes clear does not necessarily mean that they will remain clear. You can go clear and then get put into another situation, and now you're back in that cycle again, unless you get that audited out immediately to maintain your level of clearness. Go ahead, Brother Wadu.
What I had heard in Sister Patricia's question was a situation, and this is just how I perceived it, the question, a situation where the engram and the circuit itself is feeding on itself so much so that the person may pass out or have some event as a result of the motion of that particular circuit. It's like when if I get so mad, I see red and I can't think straight. But in this example, it's something that's in the circuit so much that they may lose consciousness. And what it made me think of is a seizure, that in the medical world, a person can have a seizure and it's like a reset. It didn't clear whatever the cause of them initially having the seizure. It didn't clear that or erase it, but it was so much static in the communication of their mind, which is the seizure causing them to have the that one form that we're familiar with, the jerks and the twitching and what have you, that they underwent this. But immediately after a person has a seizure, there's moments, we call it post-ictal, and it means that they're not coherent. They may be awake, but they haven't regained full consciousness. Even though they are awake and they can look at you, their mind still has not come back to a baseline normal. So it's like a reset on a computer.
It's like a computer booting itself back up.
Exactly. And so whatever that initial stimulus was in the circuit, it didn't go away, but because of the reset, it may not be showing on the computer screen at that moment that they regain consciousness.
That's a great explanation. All right. Anyone else before we go forward? All righty. So let's look at the demon circuit from the perspective of Dianetics, and then we're going to pull the ayat from the Holy Qur'an and see if we can find marriage. So what is a demon circuit? This is from the Dianetic Technical Dictionary. A mental mechanism set up by an engram command, which when re-stimulated takes over a portion of the analytical mind and acts as an individual being. Now, remember in the video of the Dianetics, if you've seen the video, the person was on the stage and the man made certain things and he would take his coat off. He would say certain things and he would put his coat on, and the audience is laughing because they see the individual taking the coat off and putting it on. I think it was every time he touched his tie, the person would put the coat on or something like that. So there was something in the environment that was making a suggestion. They called it a post-hypnotic suggestion. And anytime the individual made a statement, it produced a behavior. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So there's certain things that take place in the environment, either certain environments, certain individuals in the environment, certain things that might be said, certain things that might be experienced, might produce in us a compulsive behavior. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I know last year I made this joke, we laughed about it, but you have some individuals, they'll get the app on their phone that shows when the red sign goes on. And those that laugh know what I'm talking about. Sister Shayla, what's the red sign? The hot sign.
I'm pleading the fifth here.
Okay, Trump, you'll plead the fifth. The hot sign is if you download the app and you're a fan of Krispy Kreme, the hot sign will show up on your phone to let you know when the donuts are hot, fresh off the press. It's called the hot sign.
Absolutely.
So some of us have these little things built in that when the hot sign goes on, we jump in the car and we make that run. Thank God there's no Krispy Kreme up here. Ooh, good. Circuits are heavily charged portions of the analytical mind, which have been captured by the reactive mind and do its bidding, walled off by a charge into separate entities. Okay. Has anyone ever gone shopping while they were hungry and wind up leaving the store with all kinds of stuff that you really didn't go there to get? You went there just to get eggs and bread, and you left with ice cream and chips and dip, or is that just me?
No, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, you want to make sure. I know we have all these saints from the mothership in the class.
Oh, Lord.
He says they are created by phrases and engrams which contain the word you, such as I have to do all your thinking for you. I'm going to tell you what to do and you've got to do it. These circuits talk to the pre-clear, vocalize his thoughts for him, occlude things from him, or do other automatic functions. Sister Anya, do you still have is your hand up from last time, or do you have it up for a new question? Okay.
It was up from last time, sorry.
No problem. No problem. A pre-clear with control circuits is hard to audit, as these circuits conduct themselves as interior entities, which take the pre-clear out of the auditor's hands. Now, this is what you'll run into. Those that have finished book 1, Sister Charlotte, I don't think you have gotten up to this yet. Have you gotten up to where they talk about the engrammic commands?
No, sir.
Okay. You're gonna find where it talks about engrammic commands. You have what's called you have groupers, you have deniers, you have holders, you have misdirectors. And when you audit someone, I'll use this as an example. Have you ever, those that have children, you suspect the child just did something and you start questioning them and they start talking about something that has nothing to do with the question that you just asked them? Has anyone experienced that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
that's how the reactive mind works. If you want to see a demo kit for the reactive mind, look at a child. You know the child just went in there and got the cookies or whatever, and you start questioning the child and they start talking about something that, well, daddy is in the kitchen doing, I didn't ask you about daddy. I didn't ask you about that. I'm asking you about them cookies. The child has a way of misdirecting or denying. Well, we all did it. So that's a grouper. we all did it, you know.
Brother Lukeman, would an occlusion demon be similar to this control circuit?
Yes, because an occlusion demon, if we look at the word occluded just means blocked. Okay. So the circuit is blocked. It's just like you have a blockage in the heart and you have to do bypass surgery. When you're dealing with an aberrant individual that you're processing, you're going to come to a block. That's an occlusion demon. You got to find a way to do a mental bypass. You got to get around that blockage. So on one level, we could say these things are related.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. There's groupers, deniers, holders, misdirectors. There's one more. Starts with a B. Darn it. I can't remember. It'll come back to me.
A bouncer.
Say again?
A bouncer.
Thank you. I couldn't remember it. Bouncer. So you'll notice sometimes you'll audit someone, you're going through a particular event, and then this individual will start talking about something else that's not even related to this. That's not the individual doing that. That's the reactive mind, because you're getting closer to the truth now. And the reactive mind is just like the devil. As soon as you get close to the truth, the devil has to get you away from finding out what the truth is. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay. Same way children behave when you start questioning them. Not saying that the children are little devils, but they don't want to be found out. And it's kind of like the way we are. If we get caught, someone's getting close to something, we've got to find a way to misdirect because we don't want people to know what we're doing. Does that make sense? Oh, I forgot. I'm in a room full of saints. I'm the only one here. Okay.
Yes, sir.
No, sir, you're not the only one. You're not the only one.
Yeah, I forgot. I'm with the saints from the mothership today. A bona fide demon is one who gives thoughts, voice, or echoes the spoken word interiorly, or who gives all sorts of complicated advice like a real life voice exteriorly. So it's just like you have the angel on one side and the devil on the other. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir, it does.
Yes.
And in Dianetics, in the chapter where he talks about demons, he says some individuals had as many as 4 demons. Our lessons say 4 devils. And it says you have to do what? You have to bring and present them at one time, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Because everywhere we go, we bring our demons, our devils with us, right?
That's correct.
But we don't always present them.
True.
Present them means make them manifest. So when we're being audited, we brought our devils to the org with us, and now they are being presented when the auditor takes us back on our time track. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Bring and present, and then what's the reward? You get a button to wear on the lapel of your coat, or free transportation to see Brother Muhammad, correct?
Correct. It's true.
Okay, so here's where we're going to find this actually in the Holy Qur'an now. Okay. In the Holy Qur'an, first, let me break down these two ayats. And we have revealed the book to thee, explaining all things, and a guidance and a mercy and a good news for who?
Believer?
Well, what's the rest of the
Believer?
ayat? What's the rest of the ayat? For those who submit. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, sir, I can.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay. So the book will explain all things and give guidance and mercy and good news. But in order to get these benefits, what is it that we have to do on our behalf?
Submit.
Okay, so this is a conditional statement, we could say. Okay. So that would also imply that if we don't submit, then it's not a book explaining all things, and it's not a guidance, and it's not a mercy, and it's not a good news. So in the field of what's called mathematical proofs, you have proof, you have direct proof, and you have what's called a proof by contradiction, or the opposite, also called a corollary. So if we don't submit, we don't get these benefits. But when you look at explaining all things, the word explain means to make known, to make plain, or to make understandable. So we have been given a book that does what? It makes all things known, all things plain, and all things understandable. Haven't we been told? Jesus says, I go away, you see me no more. There's many things I could tell you, but you can't comprehend it now. But when he comes, he will bring you into a knowledge of what? All things.
All things.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this book is the Holy Quran, but could this book also be a person?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Just something to think about. Okay. The word explain also means to give the reason for or cause of. So as we go deeper into the Holy Quran, Allah has given us a book that will give us the reason for all things, or give us the cause of all things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So now, if those statements are true, and we know Dianetics is the science of the mind, and Allah has given us a book explaining all things, this is why we say, this is why I believe 1000% that the tech of Dianetics is in the Holy Quran. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Because
sir.
it would be a contradiction to say that Allah has given us a book explaining all things except Dianetics.
Correct.
Okay, so then that ayat wouldn't be true. To show the logical development or relationship of. So here we have what we call a cycle of action, a COA for abbreviation, a cycle of action. So in the Holy Quran, so far, I'm sure I haven't even scratched the surface yet, there's thousands of cycles of actions that can be applied to multiple concepts and things. And as we study and learn how to translate and unlock, as the minister has taught us, these formulae, this will allow us to study mathematics and physics and chemistry and whatever we study, and we'll be allowed to see deeper into it, because the tech is being used to remove the locks or turn the keys, problem 31, turn the keys and remove the poison and rusty locks from here. So now we can use the Holy Quran and now unlock the universe and unlock our own mind. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because all of us have these scrolls that have again, just my opinion based on what Mother Tanetta Muhammad has taught. We have these scrolls called DNA, and I'm a firm believer that there's thousands of years of information that are just written right in each one of us, and we each have our own books that we have to read. Go ahead, Sister Ania.
When you said that, could the Holy Quran, or not the Holy Quran, but could that book be a person? It made me think of conversations I've had with non-NOI Muslims, I should put it that way, so-called Orthodox Muslims, that all you need is the Holy Quran, and that the answers for everything is found in this book. But this book also says that if all the trees were pens and all of the seas were ink, and was it 7 more seas added to it, you could not exhaust the wisdom of God. That description actually fits a man or woman much more readily than the words that are contained in one book, because from the mind comes an exhaustive supply of words and explanations that that comes from a human being, because we're constantly creating and constantly pulling up new things into view, and new ideas, bringing clarity to things. So
yes, ma'am.
So.
Most definitely, I agree. I concur. The word explain is synonymous with to clear up, to illustrate, or to simplify. So this is just the first ayat. And again, I've used this ayat many, many times, but we have a book explaining all things. And it comes from the Latin word explanare, which means to make level. Then there's another ayat that says, and certainly we made the word to have many connections for their sake, so that they may be mindful. And when you look at the word connections in Arabic, the word is wasal, which means to unite, join, or link. It also means combination, to transmit, to transfer, or to convey. So in the Holy Qur'an, Allah says that He's given us a book where some of His ayats are decisive and some are allegorical. And we have to use both in conjunction, so that it says, and those in whose hearts is perversity, they take what's allegorical and they put their own interpretation on it. This is why I try to be very, very careful that whenever I make a statement, I try to connect it with something I've heard the minister say, or something that I've read of the words the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, something I've heard Mother Tanetta Muhammad say. That way I stay on a certain course, but I also know that it is not my desire to mislead anyone, and that's why I'm always connecting it and using reference to the Holy Quran, the minister's words, our teachings, okay? So we have those two things. We have a book explaining all things, and then we have a word that has many connections. So when you look at those two in conjunction, we have been given a book explaining, showing the logical development, and illustrating the cause of all things, and it contains an explanation of all things from many points of view, and is transmitted in many ways. Each individual will see, in my opinion, what Allah wants you to see, and what you see will be different than what I see. But there'll still be truths in those things. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If we all sat in a circle and we had a crystal, a piece of glass or crystal hanging in the center, if I asked Sister Shayla, what color do you see coming from the crystal? You might say blue. Brother Wadud might say green. I might see red. Well, who's correct? All of us, because we're all going to see the light as transmitted from the same source, from the perspective or from the angle in which we are situated. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
When brother Wadud, I'm quite sure when you go, sometimes you read through the Holy Qur'an, do you see medicine?
Yes, sir.
I go through, sometimes I see math, sometimes I see chess, sometimes I see mathematics. Each individual will see what it is. What's the saying that if you want to speak to God, read the Holy Quran. But when you want God, no, when you want to speak to God, get on the prayer rug. But when you want God to speak to you, open your Quran. Is that the saying?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Now, demon circuits and the whispering devil. So here we have four ayats. The four ayats we're going to look at, but we're only going to break down one of them. It says, but the devil made an evil suggestion to them that he might make manifest to them that which had been hidden from them of their shame. And he said, your Lord has forbidden you this tree, lest you become angels or become of the immortals. That's ayat 7, number 20. But we want to look at some key words in these, and I'm going to highlight the words in a minute. Surah 20, verse 120 says, but the devil made an evil suggestion to him. He said, O Adam, shall I lead thee to the tree of immortality and the kingdom which decays not? Surah 50, verse 16 says, and certainly we created man, and we know what his mind suggests to him, and we are nearer to him than his life made. And then last but not least, Surah 114, ayats 4 and 5, it says, from the evil, the whisperings of the slinking devil, who whispers into the hearts of men from among the jinn and the men. Now, the reason why I put these four ayats up here is because of this. In the first two, it says evil suggestion. In the third one, it says what his mind suggests. And then the last one, it says whispering. It used the word whispering. But in the Arabic, this is all the same word in Arabic. Okay, so the evil suggestion is the same thing as the whispering, as the same as what the mind is suggesting. So we'll look at the first one. This is one we're going to break down, see how much we can get out of it. So this is the first ayat. Now here's the key words we want to look at. We want to look at the word devil, evil suggestion, manifest, hidden, and shame. Now, if we looked at this as if it was an equation, these words we could say represent where we could input certain things. And as we input things that are similar, remember we use what's called the law of substitution in mathematics, then this ayat will give us even a better understanding of how a demon circuit operates. Sister Charlotte, how is this giving you any good insight with regards to the chapter that or lesson you're on right now?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
So let me throw this question out there. In Dianetic terms, what is the devil?
You're asking me?
No, this is for the whole
Oh.
class. What is the devil in Dianetic terminology?
Demon.
Demon. What else could we say?
Reactive mind.
Reactive mind. Anything else?
Aberration.
Aberration. Anything else? All those answers are legitimate. Could we say engram?
Yeah.
Okay. So now based on that, could we take any one of those words that we came up with or terms and input it and say, but the reactive mind made an evil suggestion.
That's true.
But the engram made an evil suggestion.
Mhm.
But the aberration made an evil suggestion.
Correct.
Okay. So what would the evil suggestion be called in Dianetic terminology? That's the demon circuit, right?
Mm.
The circuit.
Okay.
Mm.
So we could say the devil is the aberration, the valence, the reactive mind. All those terms we can use and input this in this spiritual equation. All those answers were correct. Because if you're dealing with a valence and you're dealing with aberration, if you're dealing with the reactive mind, if you're dealing with engram, aren't we still talking about the demon circuits?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the devil made an evil suggestion to him that he might make manifest. Let's look at the word manifest. The word manifest in Arabic is bada, which means to bring to light or to make visible. Now, when we are in a state of restimulation, that would be the result of a demon circuit that has clicked on, correct?
Correct.
And when that circuit is clicked on, isn't there something that's manifested in our behavior? Does it bring something to light that there's something going on in our head?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. It
Okay.
does. It does.
And so now what happens is when we act other than our own self, didn't that just manifest something that was hidden in us?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So when you look at the word hidden in Arabic, the word hidden in Arabic is wari, and it means to kindle a fire, to disguise, or to be concealed. So when something takes place in our personal life that re-stimulates us, that causes a lock, that causes us to act other than our own self because we still have these circuits, then it manifests something in us that at one time was concealed. Does that make sense? Does this ayat have ARC with the tech? Is there some agreement here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But let's look at the word shame. Let's look at the word disguise. But the word wary, that's Arabic, also means directed backward. So when we act other than our own self, isn't that as a result of something that's on our time track? So that's based on something that's, we don't know how far back it is, but we're going backwards.
Backwards.
So our aberration is we're in the present moment, but we're acting as though we are in the past. So we are now double-minded. We're in the past and present at the same time, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And the word shame means grief, affliction. This is the Arabic. Torment, to misuse or abuse, or to mistreat. So the word shame in Arabic, the word sal, agrees with the characteristics that are found on the lower tones of the tone scale. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Are with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So when we reinterpret, again, I can't see everyone, so I'm trying to go based on what I hear. So if we were to reinterpret this, we're saying that our reactive mind, the engrams, the valences, they have produced a demon circuit in us that is an evil suggestion. We call those compulsions, obsessions, insanities, neuroses, and psychoses. So we all have these things going on. And what happens is when it's re-stimulated, the behaviors are now made manifest, but the manifestation of the behavior is revealing something that has been concealed or hidden. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
And that is based upon grief, afflictions, torments, or abuses that we have endured from where? Back on our time track. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That makes sense.
Okay, Sister Patricia, you had your hand up?
Well, I did, but I think you kind of answered because I was going to ask the question this. It's not when you when you use the word hidden, it's not how far or how long ago, it's what happened that was so detrimental or deeper to you, and you was kind of hitting on it there because sometimes we might think something happened to us when we were 7 or 8 that made it hidden, but it's not the time or how long ago. It's what happened and how deeply it affected you.
Yes, you're absolutely correct, Sister Patricia.
Kind
The
of hit
longer
that.
you go back on the time track time does not necessarily equate to the strength of the engram. It's the content of that engram that determines how much attention units are or how much of the theta is interpolated there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, no, you're absolutely correct. So can we see how this ayat, once we break it down, gives us an understanding of the relationship to the reactive mind and the demon circuit and how it affects us and what it actually does to us? And now we can summarize this just based on one ayat of the Holy Quran. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. How are we doing, Sister Charlotte?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Makes sense.
Okay. And I'm specifically addressing you because I know this is the particular lesson that you're on right now. I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything.
Oh, no, sir.
Okay.
And that was a difficult lesson too. I came through that. That had me really silent for a while trying to get that lesson together.
I get the feeling that we have some that have in the past 5 minutes kind of went back and forth on their time track. Did anyone experience that? Did anyone revisit anything on their time track?
Well, it wasn't my time track. It was something that I heard about another person. They had, it was hidden so deep. They kind of put it so far back. They didn't they forgot they were raped so many times. And they had it so deep hidden that they had not really forgot about it, but just kind of like try to wipe it out.
Mm-hmm.
So talking about the hidden, that brought that up to me, because something that can happen to you. That's why I brought that up, saying it's not how long ago it happened, it's what happened that make you go so deep. It goes so deep where it's hidden, where your thoughts and your mindset of it is vanished. It's gone. But when something comes to you again, or if you get that's how she found out that she hid it, because she got audited.
Okay.
When she got audited, it all came back.
Mm-hmm.
And she had really put it so deep behind her that she actually blanked out about that.
Okay.
That put that.
Well, that's how to
Well,
react.
my time track was somebody else's, but it made me understand it a little bit better now.
Okay. The reason why I ask is this, because in our discussions, we might travel back, certain things might be brought to the surface, and I have to reiterate that if anyone experiences anything, that you get in contact, sisters get in contact with sisters, brothers get in contact with brothers, that can allow you to actually process certain events that might come up in our discussions, so that at the end of this session, you're not stuck on the time track once we end session. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. That's like coming back to present time.
I want to make sure we're all in present time, and that we have individuals that we can go to receive the type of auditing that we need. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the devil, the reactive mind, contains an evil suggestion, demon circuit, that manifests or brings to light that which is hidden, disguised, or concealed, which represents the source of our grief, torment, abuse, or mistreatment. Does that statement make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And all I did was I just took the ayat from the Holy Quran and I used what's called the law of substitution. And where the words or terms are equivalent, I just substituted Dianetic terminology for the words in the ayat, which have the same meaning, but the words are different. And by doing that, we can see that the tech of Dianetics is in the Holy Qur'an. Can we agree with that?
Mhm.
Go ahead, Sister Shayla.
Yes, sir.
You know, as we develop ourselves, and I personally don't know Arabic. I don't know about anybody else, but it just shows us how Allah put everything at our fingertips. But because we don't know Arabic, we don't get the full benefit of the Holy Quran. And that's why I should learn Arabic. Because when you break down these words, they fit exactly. You don't have to like make anything up. They just fit. And Sister Anya was mentioning how in the Quran, yes, the Quran has everything in it, but we allow the understanding of some laws and things. Now we're learning the mechanics of the human mind so we can apply this.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And just so we know, believers, I do not speak Arabic. I just know how to use an Arabic dictionary. I couldn't speak Arabic to save my life, but I know the alphabet, and that's just because I've used my dictionary so much that I know the alphabet. I know little basics here and there. And then over time, you just use the dictionary so much that some of the words just stick to your mind. But I have to learn I like to learn how to speak it as well. But anyway. Now, here's a key point that I wanted to include in this. Because it was kind of based on the word shame. And when I was looking at the word shame, neither spot nor blemish came to my mind. And then I remembered something that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said in one of the study guides. And he says this, because a lot of us, and if you don't feel this way, I have no problem saying this, I'm very critical of myself. And no matter how much good I might have been blessed to do by Allah's grace, I'm always hard on myself for the things that I do that are not correct. But the one thing that allows me to maintain my sanity a little bit is the words of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, where he says, get rid of guilt. Allah knew what we were before he chose us. So we could just stop right there. Stop.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So no matter how much we look at ourselves and all our faults and all our character flaws, Allah saw that way before. And we're not here because our penmanship was so good because we could read our letter. We are here because Allah saw fit to allow our letters to pass. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
There are individuals who wrote that letter and their letters never passed. And what happened? Some of them gave up. Our letters passed, not because we were so righteous, but because Allah is beneficent and forgiving and merciful. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So he knew what we were doing before we came in the nation. And he knows what we're doing with all of our righteous Muhammad-wearing selves. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
He knows what we know not.
Exactly. The minister says his aim is to save us from our sins and to present us to the world spotless and without blemish. So if you discover a spot within yourself or a blemish, do not retreat. Look at it with joy as though you have found precious gold or a precious stone. For every time we find a spot or blemish and apply spot remover, we are a step closer to manifest proof that Allah has intervened in our lives. That's from Self-Improvement. That's the opening letter to study guide number 7. So I wanted to include that when we deal with these demon circuits and the type of behavior that has caused in us, and realize that this behavior is not because we are bad people. It's because we were in situations and environments and other people's aberrations were passed down to us. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And one thing the minister said when we had our FOI class in Chicago a couple months ago, he said, Allah is not even concerned with our shortcomings. I'm paraphrasing it. In other words, Allah sees it, but he didn't come here to destroy us or punish us for that. He came to free us from that. Because when you look at our behavior, present tense, and this is not a justification because we have to do the work to change it, but what we suffer from is based on what was passed down to us. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In other words, believers, if you're like me, don't be so hard on yourself because we don't always get it right.
Yes, sir.
Unless I'm the only one and I'm in a room
No,
full
sir. No, sir.
Because I'm telling you, believers, there's some days when I look at myself in the mirror, I just want to slap the hell out of myself.
That's right.
Everything's for real.
Yes, sir.
Everything's for real. There's some days I get sick of me.
That's right.
The tree of immortality. Now, again, when I'm studying, these are the things that I see that helps me understand it. And if it clicks in and helps you, all praise is due to Allah. Some people might say, brother, well, I don't know, you might be reaching too far. But if it lines up and gives us a better understanding, then all praise is due to Allah. I was looking at this ayat, but the devil made an evil suggestion to him and said, "Oh, Adam, shall I lead thee to the tree of immortality and a kingdom which decays not?" I looked at that. Now, remember, the devil speaks with double talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to give you an example. Do you remember in Surah 12, when the brothers of Joseph's father did not want to send him with his brothers because he knew the brothers were jealous, correct?
Yes, sir. That's right.
Okay. And he said, why won't you let Joseph come with us? Surely we are his well-wishers, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the word it uses, well-wishers.
Right.
Didn't they wind up putting Joseph in the well?
Yes.
So
Yes.
they used double talk. I looked at it as double talk because they were well-wishers. They wished the well for him. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like how an attorney will use double talk. I don't know, maybe you don't see it, but I thought that was funny. That was just, which certainly we are his well-wishers, and then they wind up putting him in a well.
Mm-hmm.
The devil works the same way. He'll use one word, and then you've done this, you've confronted someone, they said something, they say, no, that's not how I meant it. I meant it this way. Have you experienced that before?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's called double talk. When I looked at this verse, go ahead, Brother Wadu.
Yes, sir. As you mentioned, dealing with attorneys, it made me think I could have gone to law school instead of medical school, but I didn't like the way that I view the law because it's man follows man's law. And I feel that man's law can be tampered with. So I chose the medical route because that was science. And I knew that science was based in fact that man couldn't alter. So as you mentioned, the lawyers and the double talk, that came immediately up on my time track, and I just wanted to say that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, brother. Because originally I went to school I was going to get my commission in the Army and go in the military and be my goal was to be a JAG officer. I was going to go into law. And I did an internship as a probation officer. This was back in 1990. And when I saw the hypocrisy, I had a chance to witness plea bargaining in the judge's chamber. And after seeing that garbage, and if there's anyone here as a lawyer, I mean no disrespect, but this one particular situation, I remember seeing this. And when I saw what I saw, I said, I don't have the type of heart to defend someone who's guilty. And I don't have the heart to try to prosecute someone if I think they're innocent. I'm just not cut. I'm not cut out that way. But that was just me. But anyway, Sister Anya.
It's interesting that both of you said that that you've had those type of experiences. I also had a similar experience years ago, and was considering going into law. And then I happened to take a temporary through a temp agency. I took a job as a legal secretary. And that experience totally changed my mind of how, just what you just described. And I came away from that deciding that it's just something I couldn't do, because the field is so crooked, and having to defend, like you say, going up there, knowing that the person is guilty, and you're letting them just walk around here, and that person is a murderer. And it's like, that's it. That's this. I'm out of this field. Yes, sir.
You see, when someone's arm is broken, their arm is broken. They ain't lying about that. That arm is broke. So medical field, it's a little more straight line anyway. So this tree of immortality, this is kind of like how I looked at this. In Arabic, the word is Sharajati al-Kuldi. I know my Arabic is probably horrible, but Sharajati is tree and immortality is al-Kuldi. So the basic understanding of Sharajati just means tree or bush, but it also means to argue, fight, or dispute. That's another definition in Arabic. Al-Kuldi means to remain or last forever. But the root word, khalad, means mind, heart, or spirit. So here we are, we're back at the mind again. So this tree of immortality, if we look at the Arabic words, it's starting to paint a picture of something. And when it says decays not, the Arabic word is balwa, which means tribulation or trial that doesn't end. So I looked at this tree of immortality as a state of chronic restimulation. Does that make sense? Y'all with me?
Yes, sir.
So the devil made an evil suggestion and said, Adam, shall I lead you to the tree of immortality and a kingdom which decays not? Meaning he made an evil suggestion to Adam, and then he led Adam into a state of chronic restimulation. Just by looking at the Arabic.
Yes, sir.
Do y'all follow?
Yes, sir.
Am I making too much out of this, or am I going too?
No.
So could the tree of immortality allegorically be describing a mind that contains aberration that does not end?
Yes.
Now, let's look at what's taking place in society right now. Are individuals being led to a tree of immortality? Meaning, are people losing their minds with a chronic restimulation that seems like it just won't turn off now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
If the minister told us in Divine Destruction of America that grief is going to be one of the things that Allah was going to use in the judgment, doesn't grief cause an individual to remain in chronic restimulation?
Yes, sir.
Aren't these low tones which cause individuals to act other than their own selves? So if that's the case, the fact of and this is my opinion, the minister giving us the tech is one of the tools we can use to get through this time period where we see insanity all around us. But by Allah's grace, I mean, we might have our days, but we haven't gone off the deep end yet, have we?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Brother,
By Allah's grace.
say again?
Oh, I said by Allah's grace.
Oh, okay. What do I do? Is your hand still up?
No, sir. I'm sorry.
Okay. Sister Ania, your hand still up? I'm just trying to operate two computers here. That's all. Okay.
Yes, sir. My hand was I put my hand up again.
Okay.
The tree of immortality and the chronic re-stimulation made me think of the valence and how that can become generational engrams.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, ma'am. And they have proven that scientifically that mental illness can be transmitted across generations genetically. It's called transgenerational illness, I think it is. And if you pull up, if you go to YouTube and you pull up Dr. Joy LaGrue, she has what's called post-traumatic slave disorder. She goes and she explains the concept.
Yes.
Okay.
It's very good.
So chronic restimulation. Most aberries are in a state of chronic restimulation, which on the average starts the spiral dwindling down rather rapidly. As this pertains to life force, the mechanical action of an engram on being keyed in is to capture so many of these units of life force. Sudden and sweeping restimulation of the engram permits it to capture a great many more units of life force. In the average case, every restimulation captures a greater residue of life force and holds it. In other words, as we go through these situations and it grabs our attention units, as we lose attention units, we start doing what? We start going down the tone scale. Then other things happen. Have you ever been in a situation where you're just like, can anything go right? Can I just get a break? It seems like everything is
Yes, sir.
okay. You're just like, can I just get a minute? You know,
Right.
Allah says in the Holy Quran that He tries us at least twice a year, correct? Or is it once or twice?
Once or twice.
One severely.
He tries it at least once severely, right?
Once severely.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
When
But
it's
it says,
severely.
but if it says at least once, but can Allah try us twice severely?
Yes.
Yes.
Can those trials, do those trials necessarily have to run consecutively, or can they also run concurrently?
Yes.
Concurrent.
They can
Either
be
way.
concurrently, right? This is like,
Yes.
oh, I got 101 things I'm dealing with. Okay.
Mhm.
When enthusiasm or impetus aligns the purpose of the individual toward a true survival goal. This is why we got to constantly, the messenger said, to work, right? As opposed to a pseudo goal in the engrams, he recaptures some of these units. So as we're working and we're postulating and we're working to manifest our postulates, what are we doing? We're getting back our attention units. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Because when we go back on the time track and when we're in reverie and we're having pleasure moments, aren't we gaining back attention units by going back into the past?
Yes.
So then could we say, could that also imply that postulating is the same as us gathering attention units by going forward into the future, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the more we postulate and then the more we work, the more we say kun fayakun, be it is, and we create, we complete, we measure, and we guide, and we produce all these things and put things together to manifest our postulates, we are gaining back attention units. And what happens to our tone level? Doesn't the tone level go up?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But what happens is if we're constantly going back and forth, but the spiral is dwindling, he cannot capture back, except in very unusual circumstances, as many as he has lost into the engram bank, which is why sometimes we have to change the people we hang with. We have to change the environment.
That's right.
Because have you ever noticed some days you start out great and then you go to work and that environment, it just re-stimulates and you're about ready to just slap the taste out of someone's mouth and you started the day just fine.
Right.
And now you're about to get arrested because you want to reach out and touch somebody, right?
Right.
Okay. This is the last one, but I'm not going to go in depth into it. From the evil, the whispering of the slinking devil who whispers into the hearts of men from among the jinn and the men. That word whispering is the same word that describes the evil suggestion. The word is waswasa, which means to speak under one's breath. It means to instill evil, which is the same as implant, which is the same as the needle in the brain, correct?
Yes.
Are you with me? The word in Arabic also means to tempt someone with wicked suggestions, to awaken doubts in someone's mind. It also means anxiety. So that little voice in the head that says, yo, the red light's on. Let's go get a half a dozen of them glazed donuts. No, that's weekend. We're supposed to be fasting. You can start your fast on Monday. No one's gonna know. Isn't that what we do?
Yes, sir.
I'll start the fast tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
The word waswasa also means delusion. So the whispering of the slinking devil who whispers into the hearts of men. The word heart in Arabic is not on here, but the word heart in Arabic is kalaba, which means mind. It means heart, but it also means the best part. Which leads us to lesson number 1. Why isn't the devil settled on the best part of the planet Earth? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So now
Yes.
lesson number 1 becomes a lesson that shows the effect of the demon circuit and how it affects the mind. Okay. The word also means melancholy. And this is where we're going to end it. But I see Sister Ania's hand that might still be up from the last time. And then Brother Wadu, you're next.
Yes, sir. I didn't have a question.
All right, go ahead, Brother Wadu.
As you on the slide before the last slide, the one right before mathematics and the word anxiety, I think it was temptation that caught my eye. Where does, and this ties with what you said about the hot sign, but where does the word conditioning come in? And I think about that because unfortunately there is a Krispy Kreme in my city. I haven't been addicted to Krispy Kreme, but I find that but I do find that through conditioning, whenever I drive down that road, I look to see if that orange sign is lit. Not that I'm not, Krispy Kreme isn't I haven't grabbed that. I have some other things that grab me. But I'm still conditioned to look and see if that orange light is on, even though I don't go there and eat. How does that factor in, the word conditioning?
It's the same as habit.
Okay.
You could say habituation. We could say compulsion, because look at it from this perspective. And I'll use myself as an example. Say, tell the truth to shame the devil. When I get stressed, I snack. Okay, that's my weakness. And over the course of the past month, I have been doing juice fasting to get myself away from processed sugar. Okay. I'm trying to break certain habits. And I've noticed that when I'm in certain emotional states, I crave certain foods. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
For some of us, when we are in a state of stress or something happens to us, we have something that we go to. But that could be based upon something from our childhood. Okay, how many of us had a parent, we did something wrong? Now, if you're from the South, you know all about switches. And then after you got a couple of licks with the switch, and usually it was mom or big mama that used to use the switch, and then they would feel bad afterwards, and then they would give you something as a way of reconciling after they just tore your behind up with that switch. Has anyone ever experienced that?
Yes.
No, sir. I didn't get no goodies.
Okay. Some individuals might have been blessed with a person who felt guilty, and then they, and then you might get something in return. So now what happens is, and this is just using an example, the cookie or whatever was given to us sweet was connected to an individual that just tore our behinds up. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Connected to pleasure.
So here we go. So now, Sister Shayla, what was that called? You had mentioned it about a couple of weeks ago. What's that called in Dianetic term? Do you remember?
Being in somebody else's valence? No.
It wasn't being in someone else's.
It's
What type of an engram did you mention a couple of weeks ago?
it's a holder.
You said did you come up with the term the pro survival engram?
Yes, the pro survival engram.
Pro survival
I
engram.
didn't, but that's a pro survival because it's the worst type of engram, but it's the pro survival engram. It is. No, that's in the book.
No, but I'm saying you had brought it up a couple of weeks ago. That's where I remember it from.
Yeah, it's a pro survival engram, and it's the worst engram.
Mm-hmm.
The worst.
So look at the long-term effect of that. Here's the potential of this. That an individual feels like they can only get a reward after they've been beat if they are beaten.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Now,
an abusive life.
Yeah, so now you see where we're going. So now, why is the person seeking after abuse now as an adult? Because they were abused as a child. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So certain characteristics that were manifested in our childhood were done as survival mechanisms, and we still manifest the same behaviors as adults, but now it looks like insanity. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It served a purpose back here.
Did he muffle or it's just me?
Say what? So one thing, again, Dr. Gabor Mate, and I'm an avid, if you go on YouTube, watch his videos are awesome.
They're good. They're good.
He's a great psychologist. And what he says is that when you take a child in a household, you take an adult. If I was to say something right now that offended you, you could either stand up for yourself or you could just leave the Zoom meeting and you don't have to deal with it. But when a child is in a household, the child can't speak against its parent and the child can't lead. So the child has to create survival mechanisms to endure behavior that goes against the child, but the child is forced to endure that behavior. It has to come up with these survival mechanisms. So you might have a child that doesn't want anything to do with their parents. They avoid the parents because the parents are abusive. So what do? They go off in their room and now they have imaginary friends.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a survival mechanism for the child. But hell, if you're 40 years old and you still got an imaginary friend, then that's an issue. And that's, can you imagine those of us that are married, if your spouse is sitting at the table talking to someone, who are you talking to? Oh, I'm talking to Larry. Who's Larry? Well, it's my imaginary friend. Now you start looking at your husband like he's crazy.
Yes, sir.
And I'm throwing the humor to throw some pleasure moments because I want to bring us back. I want to bring us back to present time now. But y'all get the picture, right?
Yes, sir.
Certain things we
Yes,
manifest
sir.
now is from our childhood.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sometimes we're in Buddhism, it's called samskara. It's a cycle of pain. See, if you go in Buddhism, it's you'll see the Dianetics in it. We get caught in this cycle, and that's what happens even today. And that's English lesson number C1. Why does he fear now that he's a grown man? Because he was taught to eat the wrong food when he was a boy, right? Well, that goes for all of us. Our behaviors are based on, this is going back to what Brother Badu was saying about certain behaviors are programmed. We call them habituation. We could also call them addictions. It doesn't have to be drugs. It doesn't have to be alcohol. It could be sweets. It could be TV. It could be internet. It could be anything that we do to escape reality because we've been re-stimulated with regards to something, and now we need a way to escape the environment. because we can't escape the environment. Does that make sense?
Perfect.
Okay,
Yes,
and that's the beauty of the tech. The beauty of the tech is that it helps us to come to grips and identify. And as soon as we identify the situations, now we can we gain back those attention units, and it takes the energy off of that and gives us more of ourself back. Does that make sense?
sir.
Okay. And with that, let me open the floor up for any closing questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, corrections, suggestions, so that the believers that wish can move on to the Closing the Gap Zoom meeting. Anything that anyone would like to bring to the table before we close it out?
I just wanted to be very clear in my see if I understand. The evil suggestion that these surahs bring up, is that part of the reactive mind?
That's the way I'm looking at it.
Okay.
I'm drawing the parallels between the whispering of the slinking devil, or the evil suggestions that's described in the ayats that we covered, and how they parallel or correspond to the demon circuit that's found in the Dianetics.
Okay.
If you were to look at every ayat in the Holy Qur'an where it says the devil did or the devil said, if you look at that ayat, I'm in the process of actually completing this task. But if you look at all those ayats are going to describe the characteristics of the reactive mind as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
I just wanted to thank you for bringing clarity, or to try to help me bring clarity to these studies. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Sister Charlotte. Does anyone have any other concepts or topics they would like to see covered in the upcoming Zoom meetings? Any assignments that y'all want to give me to?
Brother Lukeman.
Yes.
To the sister that was having difficulty with having re-stimulation by someone, you must remember that struggling for her balance, and go into the admiration aspect of the individual in front of her. I don't care if it's the shoes, if it's their hair, their nails, find something and just be with it, because you're being re-stimulated because you are in that gerbil. It shouldn't be like this. Why is she like it? This is the way she is, and this is the way she's not. And it's hard for you to be with that. Not how it should be. This is what it is. And when you can be with what it is, you won't be re-stimulated as fast.
Sister Shayla, thank you for bringing that point up, because I was going to mention this before, but it slipped my mind. It's very important. What you just said is very important for both individuals. Number one, it's important for us to say that to the other individual, because we know that individual 9 times out of 10 is aberrated and they don't have a knowledge of self. That's number one. So by us doing that and bringing them up the tone scale, we might in fact be saving them from something that they're about to do. How it helps us from a Dianetic standpoint is like this. There have been times that I've had to catch myself saying certain things and doing certain things when certain situations take place. I still have to catch myself, say, whoa, what are you doing? And then I have to go back and correct that. When we use admiration, and it's funny that you say that, because in the lesson I'm going through right now, the main concept of the subject is admiration. It's interesting that you bring that up. What that does for us is it helps us to break our own dramatization, because we're not clear yet. So for me to find something good to say about someone else, that's helping me to break my aberrated mind.
Correct.
And L. Ron Hubbard has what's called a broken dramatization. But you're absolutely correct. what it boils down to is what's in the rules of we have the restrictive laws of Islam, then we have the general rules of conduct. Be kind and do good to all. It's just simple. Just be nice to everyone. Why? I mean, it doesn't hurt just to be nice. And if they don't return it, then say, well, God bless you, brother. God bless you, sister. I pray Allah gives you a better day tomorrow than he has today. And leave it at that. We've done our part. So, well, thank you, believers. I don't want to hold this any more time. It's not too bad, but no other concepts or topics y'all would like to see covered in the near future? Going once, going twice. All right.
The sequences.
Say what? Okay. You said it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I have started it, Sister Deborah. I can say that I have started it. Sequences. Okay. Now, what specifically about sequences did you want to see covered?
It was a topic you and Sister Anya was talking about, and I came in on the end of it.
Okay.
Maybe synchronicity going with it, or I'm not sure, because like I said, I came in on the end of it. And I would have to go back and see what I wrote down.
If you wrote something down specifically, just send it to me as an email. I do have something that I started to put together. So that might be the reason why I put it together. But if you have something specific, just send it to me and I'll incorporate it in there. But I did see something really, really interesting, connecting sequence and series from the perspective of mathematics into using that as a demo kit to understand the Dianetic tech. Go ahead, Sister Patricia.
Yes, sir. The slides, are they going to be on the Supreme Wisdom?
Yes, I'm gonna post this. I'm gonna post this on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, because I was back and forth. I had to get my grandsons ready for bed, so
Yes,
I was
ma'am.
back and forth. I missed a lot. I tried to take some notes, but
yeah, I will post it. I will post it as soon as it finishes downloading.
Thank you.
All right, you're very welcome. All right, family. Until next time, I will strive to have the meeting on Wednesday. I do have to work, so there might be a possibility. I will strive to do the class while I'm at work. But if not, I will go ahead and send out the email, and then we will see each other again on the 12th, inshallah. So with that, let us go ahead and close it out. Attention prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. All praise is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. Master, the day of judgment in which we now live, the alone do we serve, thine aid do we seek. Please, Allah, guide us on the straight path, the path upon whom thou hast bestowed favors, not the path upon whom thy wrath is brought down, nor of those who go astray if they've heard thy teachings. Ameen.
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 Assalamu alaikum, family.
Alaikum salam, everyone.
Salam.